Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a topic that has mystified and fascinated us for centuries, the confessions of murderers on their deathbeds. It's a topic that sends shivers down our spines, raises hairs on the back of our necks, and fills us with a sense of morbid curiosity. Throughout history, we have seen some of the most heinous criminals come forward with shocking revelations in their final moments, revealing the depths of their depravity and the motives behind their unthinkable actions. For notorious serial killers to everyday murderers, their confessions have left us stunned, horrified, and intrigued. What drives a person to confess to their crimes at the very end of their life? Is it a genuine remorse for their actions or an attempt to gain some sort of twisted redemption? Join us as we explore the psychology behind these confessions and delve into some of the most chilling cases in history. Get ready to be captivated by the dark and twisted world of murderers on their deathbed. 1. Weepy-voiced killer. Travel back in time with us to the chilling 1980s, when Minnesota police were hot on the trail of a serial killer who preyed on young women from the Twin Cities. The twisted monster had a sickening habit of taunting law enforcement with high-pitched anonymous phone calls, earning him the ominous nickname, the Weepy-voiced killer. This killer's gruesome modus operandi was to lure unsuspecting victims into his car, promising them a ride before whisking them away to a secluded location where he would take their lives in the most horrific ways imaginable. One victim, Kimberly Compton, was stabbed a gut-wrenching 61 times with an ice pick, while another, Karen Podek, met her brutal end at the hands of a tire iron. The killer's weapon of choice was as unpredictable as his methods, ranging from screwdrivers to blunt objects to ice picks. The case went cold for years, leaving authorities baffled and the public terrified. But just when hope was running out, the unexpected happened. Paul Michael Stephanie, a devoted Catholic, came forward and confessed to the heinous murders, shocking everyone who knew him. The catch? Stephanie was dying of terminal cancer, and his confession would leave everyone wondering if it was genuine remorse or a twisted attempt at redemption. Join us as we explore this bone-chilling case and try to unravel the mind of a killer. 2. The Contract Killer. In 2018, the startling confession of a terminally ill New Zealand resident known only as Sean has ignited a fiery debate about the extent of doctor-patient confidentiality when it comes to heinous crimes committed over 50 years ago. Sean's admission revealed that he had been a ruthless hitman, staring into the eyes of his victims as they begged for mercy before mercilessly pulling the trigger. Despite years of charitable work and volunteering, Sean's remorse never waned, and his doctors urged him to confess to the authorities before it was too late. However, with only his medical team privy to the details of his past, it took a victim advocacy group and some persistent detective work to uncover the truth and bring long overdue closure to the families of Sean's victims. 3. The one who confessed but lived to regret. Meet James Washington, a man already serving a 15-year prison sentence for attempted murder, who suffered a sudden heart attack and made a shocking admission while fighting for his life. He confessed to murdering Joyce Goodner back in 1995, a case that had remained unsolved for years. But here's where things really get interesting. Washington didn't end up dying from his heart attack. In fact, he even tried to take back his confession later on, but the evidence was already out there, and he was ultimately found guilty of the heinous crime and sentenced to life in prison. The details of the murder are gruesome. Goodner's nose was flattened, her cheekbone broken, and her skull shattered in multiple places. It seems like justice finally caught up with Washington, and the curious circumstances surrounding his confession and recovery only add to the intrigue of this chilling case. 4. The one who murdered William Desmond Taylor. The 1920s was a glamorous and prosperous era for Hollywood, but the murder of famed director William Desmond Taylor shocked Tinseltown to its core. At the time, Taylor was one of the most prominent and respected directors in the movie industry, so when his neighbor noticed his lights still on late at night, it seemed like business as usual for the hardworking director. Little did she know, the sinister events that were about to unfold would shake Hollywood for decades to come. The following morning, Taylor's cook and valet, Henry Peavy, made a shocking discovery. Taylor lay dead on the floor with a bullet wound in his back. Despite a long list of potential suspects, including Taylor's wife and child, who he abandoned during the gold rush and had no idea where he had disappeared to until seeing him on the big screen one day, the case remained unsolved for over 4 decades. But then, in a stunning twist, former silent film star Margaret Gibson came forward in 1964 and confessed to the murder after suffering a heart attack. Her confession shed new light on the case, and her motives for committing the crime left the public stunned and fascinated. The murder of William Desmond Taylor remains one of the most intriguing unsolved cases in Hollywood history, and the twists and turns of the investigation continue to captivate people's imagination to this day. 5. Lorraine Jacob strangling. In the small town of Liverpool, Harvey Richardson was known as the quiet and unassuming local librarian. With no criminal record and a demeanor as mild as milk, no one would have ever suspected him of being capable of murder. But after his death at the age of 77, a shocking discovery was made that rocked the town to its core. As decorators cleaned out his home, they stumbled upon a leather satchel containing an envelope marked "Private and Confidential." Inside was a 9-page letter confessing to the murder of Lorraine Jacob, a woman who had been found dead in Liverpool in 1970. The letter revealed a shocking motive. Jacob had allegedly stolen 2 cameras from Richardson after he had taken pictures of her children. This led to a heated argument, and in a drunken rage, Richardson strangled Jacob to death. But that's not all. Richardson had gone to great lengths to cover up his crime, making it appear as though the murder was of sexual nature. He had even stolen Jacob's underwear and kept it as a sick memento for years. The letter was accompanied by newspaper clippings of the murder, the missing underwear, and an antique air pistol. Despite the brutal nature of the crime, Richardson was never a suspect, and his confession only came to light after his death. The shocking discovery sent shockwaves throughout the town, and people couldn't help but wonder what other secrets were hidden behind the seemingly unremarkable facade of their beloved librarian. 6. Death of Willie Edwards. In the depths of the cold winter in 1957, the body of Willie Edwards was found floating in the murky waters of the Alabama River. 2 fishermen who were out for an early morning catch stumbled upon the horrific sight, but little did they know that this discovery would lead to a dark and twisted tale of injustice and hatred. Despite having leads on the culprit, the police were never able to bring the perpetrators of this heinous crime to justice. The Ku Klux Klan members who had forced Edwards to leap to his death remained scot-free, evading the law at every turn. The case was thrown out of court twice, and it seemed like justice for Edward would never be served. However, fate had other plans. The widow of Henry Alexander, a former KKK member, stepped forward with a shocking revelation that would shake the foundation of the town. According to Diane Alexander, her husband had made a deathbed confession, confessing to his involvement in the brutal killing of Edwards. As Diane courageously spoke out, she hoped that her husband's confession would provide some closure to Edwards' family and bring a semblance of justice to a case that had remained unsolved for so long. But will her testimony be enough to finally hold the perpetrators accountable for their actions? Or will the shadows of hate and injustice continue to loom over the town? Only time will tell. 7. The case of Joanne Harrison. In the shadows of a derelict garage in Preston, the lifeless body of Joanne Harrison lay motionless, her death shrouded in mystery. The year was 1975, and the police were convinced that the notorious Yorkshire Ripper was the culprit. But little did they know that the truth was far more sinister. For 16 long years, the town lived in fear of the Ripper until his capture in 1981 finally brought some semblance of peace. But as the police investigated his crimes, they soon realized that Harrison was not one of his victims. So who had taken her life? Years went by, and the case remained unsolved until 2008 when the police received a breakthrough. A man by the name of Christopher Smith was arrested for drunk driving, but it was what they found during his arrest that would crack this case wide open. A DNA swab taken at the time of his arrest revealed that Smith had a sordid past riddled with criminal convictions for theft, assault, and even sexual attacks. But that was not all. A shocking discovery was made at his home, a 3-page confession in which Smith admitted and apologized for the murder of Harrison. The letter had been written just a day before he passed away, consumed by a terminal illness. The truth had finally come to light, and justice was served. The DNA swab had provided the missing link, matching Smith's DNA to that found on Harrison's body, closing the case forever. But the question remains, how many more secrets lay buried in the shadows waiting to be unearthed? 8. Adam Walsh abduction. It was just another day at the Hollywood Mall until 6-year-old Adam Walsh vanished into thin air. Panic spread like wildfire as the search for the missing boy began, but it would take 6 agonizing days before his headless torso was found. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, but the worst was yet to come. 2 weeks later, Adam's head was discovered in a drainage canal, sending shockwaves of horror and disbelief through the nation. The search for the killer was intense, but it would take 2 long years before a break in the case. The perpetrator was none other than career criminal Otis Toole, serving 5 life sentences for a string of heinous crimes. But despite being a suspect for some time, Toole had made unreliable confessions for hundreds of murders before, including twice for the murder of Adam Walsh. Most of these confessions turned out to be lies, and he even recanted his previous testimony about the Walsh boy. But then, on his deathbed, Toole finally confessed to his niece that he had killed the child. It was the 3rd and final confession, and this time it was the truth. The case was finally closed, but the question remained, how many more innocent lives had Toole claimed? Adam's father, John Walsh, turned his pain into purpose, becoming a fierce advocate for victims of violent crime. His long-running TV program, America's Most Wanted, has helped bring countless criminals to justice, but the memory of his beloved son lives on, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope and justice can prevail. 9. Stauntons double murder. It was supposed to be just another day at the ice cream store, but it turned into a bloodbath that would haunt the town for decades. In 1967, 2 women were brutally murdered, leaving no clues or suspects. People whispered in hushed tones, wondering who could have committed such a heinous act. For 41 years, the case remained unsolved until a shocking confession turned everything on its head. Sharon Diane Crawford Smith, a former employee at the ice cream shop, came forward and revealed that she was the perpetrator. Her motive? She was tormented and bullied by her colleagues because of her sexuality. Smith's confession was chilling, but it left one question unanswered. Where was the murder weapon? She claimed to have given it to a detective, but it was nowhere to be found. The mystery deepened until the gun was discovered in the possession of a former police officer's widow. The revelation sent shockwaves through the town, and people struggled to come to terms with the truth. The ice cream store, once a symbol of innocence and joy, was now forever tainted by the memory of the gruesome murders. But the confession finally gave closure to the families of the victims, who had waited for justice for over 4 decades. 10. The murder of Christine Kett. In 1867, Christine Kett was found dead, bludgeoned with an axe on her cellar steps. Her brother discovered the gruesome scene along with their neighbors, and suspicion immediately fell on Kett's mother, who collapsed into hysterics upon seeing the commotion. Despite evidence pointing to the mother, she was released from police custody due to a lack of concrete proof. The case remained unsolved for years until a shocking confession came to light in 1884. Kett's mother, on her deathbed, revealed that she had murdered her own daughter during a heated argument. The confession was kept secret for years, but eventually Kett's brother revealed the truth to the police. The case that had baffled investigators for nearly 2 decades was finally solved, revealing a dark and tragic family secret. In this video, we've seen how some of the most infamous murder cases in the history were finally solved thanks to the deathbed confessions of the perpetrators. From the brutal slaying of a 6-year-old boy to the shocking murder of 2 women in an ice cream store, these cases remained unsolved for decades until the killers themselves finally spoke up on their deathbeds. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.